At the corner of Baltimore and Breckenridge Streets in Gettysburg stands a modest brick house, unassuming at first glance, but for its cheerful blue door. Passers-by might see it as just another well-preserved home in a town steeped in Civil War lore. But linger a little longer and let the stillness settle around you. There's something else beneath the surface here, something softer and sadder. This was the home of Tillie Pierce, a 15-year-old girl who witnessed the horrors of war firsthand. She fled this house for her safety during the Battle of Gettysburg, only to find herself near the center of the fighting. Today we take a look at Tillie Pierce, the horrors she witnessed, and the house that she once called home. But beware, there are some who say that something remains here. Maybe just a memory, or maybe it's something more. So if you're curious, let's take a walk through history. The Tillie Pierce House was built in 1829 when Gettysburg was just beginning to find its shape. It was a time before the railroads or the bloody thunder of war arrived on its doorstep. The Pierce family, like many others, lived a life that hovered somewhere between modest comfort and simplicity. It was the home of James Pierce, a butcher, and a respected man who ran his shop just up the street. James married his wife Margaret in 1835, and together they had 4 children, the youngest of whom they would call Tillie. Matilda Jane Tillie Pierce was born on March 11, 1848 in Gettysburg. She lived a typical small-town life, attending church, helping at home, and socializing with friends. By the summer of 1863, the Civil War was drawing closer to Pennsylvania. Rumors spread that Confederate troops were moving north. Soldiers began appearing in and around Gettysburg. Still, many residents did not believe their quiet town would soon become the center of a massive conflict. That would change on July 1st, 1863. Union and Confederate forces began clashing west of town. Tillie watched as troops marched through Gettysburg, artillery rolled into position, and distant gunfire echoed across the hills. Her parents, fearing for her safety, arranged for Tillie to leave town with a neighbor, Mrs. Shriver, and travel to what they believed would be a safer location: the farm of Jacob Weichert, located near Little Round Top. As Tillie later wrote, she hurried through town as soldiers warned civilians to move quickly. They told us to hurry. We were in great danger. We fairly ran. As she left Gettysburg, she saw limping men, bandaged soldiers, and stretchers carrying the wounded. By the time she reached the Weichert farm, the barn was already filling with casualties. But the battle had only just begun. Over the next 3 days, the Weichert farm became a makeshift hospital. Surgeons operated inside the house, while wounded soldiers filled the barn and surrounding fields. For a 15-year-old girl, the sights were overwhelming, as were the sounds. Groaning, crying, dying men lying side by side. She described the experience as unlike anything she had ever seen before. But despite her fear, Tillie began to help. She carried water to soldiers, helped nurses clean wounds, and helped prepare food for the wounded. At one point, she sat with a dying officer, holding a candle and speaking with him until he passed away. She later learned he was General Stephen H. Weed, mortally wounded during the fighting near Little Round Top. As the battle intensified, amputations began. Surgeons worked from sunrise to sunset, their sleeves stained dark with blood, the smell of antiseptic mixed with the smell of death that lingered in the July heat. As limbs were detached, she heard men call out for their mothers as blood pooled beneath them. Surgeons and nurses worked rapidly. Civilians tore linen into bandages, and the air around the farm was thick with smoke and the metallic bite of death. On the morning of July 4th, 1863, the guns fell silent. 3 days of thunder had ended. The smoke drifted slowly across the Pennsylvania hills. And in the quiet that followed, Gettysburg became something else entirely. When the armies left Gettysburg, they left thousands of wounded soldiers scattered across the countryside. Barns became hospitals, churches became operating rooms, homes filled with the groans of men who might never return to their loved ones. And like so many others, the Pierce home had become a hospital as well. Blood had soaked into its floorboards. Its rooms had heard final prayers, last breaths, and desperate goodbyes. The scale of death at Gettysburg was staggering. More than 7,000 soldiers were killed, and over 50,000 became casualties. For days, the dead remained where they had fallen. The July heat accelerated decay, and the smell spread across the countryside. Burial crews worked constantly, digging graves wherever they could. Sometimes bodies were buried quickly and without identification. Families would never know where their loved ones had fallen. The fields around Gettysburg, once green with summer crops, were now dotted with shallow graves. Soon the locals began reporting strange lights at night, lantern-like glows moving slowly across the fields where burial crews had worked. Some said they were search parties. Others insisted they saw figures walking where no one should have been. Tillie later described how Gettysburg changed once the darkness fell. The lanterns flickered in the hospital windows. Shadows stretched across blood-stained floors. The air was heavy, still, and unnaturally quiet. She wrote of hearing distant cries carried on the wind. Sometimes she believed it was wounded soldiers calling for help. Other times, she wasn't so sure. Many civilians reported strange sounds in the days after the battle. Footsteps in empty barns, horses whinnying when none were present. Doors creaking open in houses filled only with the wounded and the dying. Tillie herself recalled walking past rows of injured soldiers at night, hearing men whisper in their sleep, calling for mothers, wives, and home. The words blended together, creating a haunting chorus in the darkness. As weeks passed, the wounded slowly recovered or passed away. The burial of the dead continued. Civilians tried to return to normal life, but Gettysburg had changed. Tillie later wrote that the town seemed quieter than before. People spoke in softer voices. The laughter of children felt rare. In November of 1863, when President Abraham Lincoln arrived to dedicate the Soldiers' National Cemetery, Gettysburg once again filled with visitors. But beneath the ceremony and speeches, the town still carried the weight of what Tillie had witnessed. Lincoln spoke of sacrifice and remembrance. Tillie and the rest of Gettysburg's residents already understood. For everywhere they looked, they were reminded of what had happened. broken fences, shattered trees, scars across the land, and memories. Years later, as a grown woman trying to make sense of it all, Tillie wrote down these memories. Her book, At Gettysburg, or What a Girl Saw and Heard of the Battle, is among the most detailed civilian accounts of the war. She didn't write like a general, she wrote like someone who had felt it, her words carrying the pain of youth broken too early. But what of the house she grew up in? Today the house still stands and it bears her name. The Tillie Pierce House Inn welcomes travelers looking for a place to rest and reflect. But it may offer more than a warm bed and Civil War charm. Guests report a presence almost immediately upon entering. Not aggressive nor malevolent, just there. Quiet laughter in the hallway, unmistakably young, almost playful. Footsteps on the stairs, so light they could only belong to a child. And shadows moving where no one walks, standing at the edge of your vision, just long enough for you to doubt your eyes. And then there's the girl. She's been seen several times, a child in a 19th century dress, drifting across the second-floor landing. Her expression is the most haunting part. It's not fear, not even sadness. It's longing, as if she's searching for someone to talk to, someone to see her. One guest staying in the same room Tillie once called her own described waking up in the middle of the night to find the girl standing just outside her door. The girl didn't speak. She simply looked in as though remembering, and then vanished without a sound. But the attic holds the darkest memory. One visitor, staying alone in the attic bedroom, awoke to laughter, light and curious, like a child playing a game. He sat up in bed, disoriented, and that's when he saw her. The girl stood at the foot of the bed, barely visible in the moonlight. Her mouth moved, and though her voice was like wind slipping under a door, her words chilled him to the bone.
"Why won't you play with me?"
And then she was gone. A dream, maybe. At least that's what he told himself, until morning when he went to the attic window and saw small handprints in the dust on the glass. The room had been locked. No child had entered. Some believe the girl is Tillie herself, trapped not by pain but by memory. Her spirit, they say, is still searching for comfort, for connection. Others think the house, soaked in death and loss, has become a magnet for those lost souls she once comforted. Perhaps she's not alone up there. Perhaps they're drawn to her, even now. Tillie's memoir was not filled with ghosts or supernatural claims. It didn't need to be. Her story captured something even more haunting: the human cost of war. The cries of wounded soldiers, the stillness after death, the silence that settled over Gettysburg. Tillie Pierce had walked among the wounded and dying, and she lived in a town that would never be the same again. Even today, Gettysburg is often described as one of the most haunted places in America. Visitors report footsteps in empty fields, strange voices carried on the wind, and shadows moving among the hills. As for the Tillie Pierce house, it is most certainly haunted by what it meant to grow up too fast, to face the unthinkable, and to survive. Tillie did survive, but the echoes of what she saw, of what she felt, seemed to echo still. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time as we explore more curious history. Take care.